Okay, so now we get to the most critical part, critical aspect of this text. The relationship between class on the one hand and status on the other, in actual reality. After we have analyzed separately what they are and how they work, what they are about, we have to see what the connection is between these two. So first off, Weber says, to distinguish them again first, says property as such is not a basis for status qualification. And he writes directly that the market knows nothing of honor. The market, so this is what defines class, your market position. The market knows nothing of honor. A good contemporary example of that is, of course, Wall Street. If you think of Wall Street executives, what gives them power is their sheer economic influence, the wealth accumulated through derivatives trading and so on. But these days, Wall Street executives don't exactly have high status. They're not exactly held in high esteem. But the market knows nothing of honor. They still have power, but through the sheer economic influence that they have, through the wealth. Class, so to remind us again, class stratification works based simply on your power of acquisition, simply on your market position. Versus status groups, they are stratified, so put into different places in the social order, in the higher echelons or the lower echelons. Status groups are stratified based on the symbolic meaning of what you consume, not on the sheer possession of goods and your ability to purchase them, but on the symbolic meaning that accrues to those. So cultural and social practices. In effect, Weber says the status order, stratification by status, by style of life, would be threatened if money was all that counted. So the status order can only be maintained if the operation of the market is actually limited in what gives social honor. Another way of saying that is, in order for you to have high status, your acquisitions power should actually be invisible. You have to have acquisition power, but consumption actually, or the process of acquiring wealth actually has to be rather invisible for you to really get the status. And we come back to that point. But first let's look into what that says about the role of family legacy. Usually, Weber says, it's a great past. Being able to claim a great past, great family history, is what gives you status. So this is where the sense of dignity is what the sense of dignity is really based on. Think of the term the first families of Virginia. So being part of that extended family is what gives you very high status in the US. Think of the Kennedy clan, a long history of influence in public life. Interesting here in this case is to think about the contrast between the Bush family and also the McCain family versus Obama. Even though the discourse about Bush is that he has a ranch in Texas, but actually the Bush clan really comes from Massachusetts, has a very long history of wealth and political influence. Grandfather was in politics, the father was in politics, the sons, not only George W. Bush, but also his brother is in politics, and they have influence, they have high status coming from this family. McCain, interesting, he comes from a long history, from a long legacy of military families. Okay, so military honor as the basis of McCain's status. Which of course he repeats again and again in campaigning. He's making claims to that status. So those stories about Korea and his military career also claim to that history of the military family. Of course, McCain, through his wife Cindy McCain, he's also extremely wealthy. Extremely wealthy. Cindy McCain is a heiress of the Anheuser-Busch empire, the beer distributor empire. So long family history here. If you compare that with Obama, much more recent. Okay, he comes from a low class background, but he was able to go to elite schools. He graduated with a law degree. I mean, first he went to college at Columbia University. He graduated with a law degree from Harvard. He became the president of Harvard Law Review. But he usurped, this usurpation, a term that Weber uses several times. He was able to claim, based on his individual contributions, not based on a long family legacy, he was able to usurp those positions of high social status. Now, if you're the president of the Harvard Law Review, that gives you extreme social esteem, extremely high social esteem in society. Which shows that political membership very often is a basis for you to claim status. So Weber says actually very explicitly, nowadays, even though, yes, a long family legacy is still the most usual case, but through political membership you can usurp high status. So now, but interestingly, and I'm trying to make this visual, distinguishing class from status, so property as such is not a status qualification. So status operates on other principles. But now Weber says, but in the long run, it is. In the long run, wealth, property, so your market position, in the long run is the basis for status. Because of course, think the Kennedy clan, they are extremely wealthy. The Bush clan, they are extremely wealthy. So in the long run, yes, below the surface of lifestyle distinctions runs the economic power of class. You can start understanding this better by thinking about terms like parvenu, so someone who arrives recently on the scene, someone who's coming from somewhere else. This is what that French word means. Or maybe the term that you're more familiar with, the nouveau riche. Again, a French expression that says those who are newly rich, who have very recently acquired wealth. And we look at that often as somewhat tacky. I recommend watching The Housewives of New York City. It's a show on Bravo, I believe. And the first one was The Housewives of Orange County. Now we have our own Housewives of New York City. And these are the wives of men who are extremely wealthy, but who acquired their wealth very recently, mostly through the Wall Street practices that we are all now so unhappy about. And they come off as tacky. Their extreme wealth and going shopping to Bergdorf Goodman, etc., etc., all the practices they engage in. The reason why this show works at all, it wouldn't work at all if you were to do it with old established Upper East Side families. It only works because they are nouveau riche, they are newly rich, and it seems tacky to us. Yes, they are able to engage in enormous consumption because they have market power. They have acquired property, but they don't exactly have status. It's kind of tacky. Because their consumption is so, or where they got their money from, it's still so visible. It's still so obvious to everyone that they just recently got their wealth.